Good morning, Sanibona, Dumela, Molweni, a very warm and hearty South African Mzansi. Good morning to you all. We are joining us today on the second of our exciting broadcasts of The Other Side, a webinar series to survive the COVID pandemic. We are extremely excited to be broadcasting to you today from the launch of our brand new studio, an innovative and virtual studio that would not have been possible without our technical partners, Multimedia. Today you are joining us for episode 2 in a series of 6 episodes of The Other Side. And the topic for today's webinar is designed to provide you with the inspiration to reinvent your business using social media to be rediscovered during lockdown. We are so excited to ensure that you are going to be having a fantastic time on our new and fabulous set. We are aiming to ensure that you get the maximum from our lineup of speakers, each of whom have many years of experience in their respective areas of expertise, and they're all here today giving you their time to share their knowledge with you, to ensure that we as an industry survive this very extraordinary time. But before we start, I would just like to go through some housekeeping with you to acquaint those of you who are joining us for the very first time on this platform called Crowdcast. Let me give you the layout of the room. First of all, we have the chat room. This is the networking area and is located to the right of your screen. Here is where we invite you to network and engage with your fellow attendees and to get to know one another and share your experiences. Remember, we're a global audience today, so use the opportunity to get some advice and insights on how your fellow tourism friends from around the world are managing their properties and in their markets to ensure their survival. Even if it's just a friendly hello. And I would like to say a friendly hello to everybody from around the world. I see we have people from Pakistan, we've got the United Kingdom, we have South Africa, of course. Wow, fellow African brothers and sisters, Nairobi, Ghana, we even have someone from Rwanda and Sydney, Australia. So this really is a global broadcast. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. At the bottom of the chat room is a plus sign, and there you will find an opportunity to ask our panelists or presenters some questions. So if you have a question for one of our panelists and you'd like them to answer it, please click on the plus sign and type in your question, and we will endeavor to make sure that our panelists answer your questions. During the broadcast, we'll also be putting up some polls. You'll find the poll button at the bottom of your screen. Click on it from time to time and kindly participate in the polls. We'd love to get your feedback and also share the results with you during and after this broadcast. Then, of course, we also have the call to actions, which are also located at the bottom of your screen. And we may or may not use these during the webinar, but just keep an eye on it and respond if need be. Last but not least, since you are joining us from a familiar environment, I'm sure you know where it is that you can get yourself a refreshment should you need one during the broadcast. And please don't ask me where the lavatories are. I'm sure you know exactly where those are. So without any further ado, please allow me to introduce to you my colleague and co-presenter for today's Crowdcast, a familiar face in the tourism sector of South Africa. In fact, he is also a much in-demand global e-marketing guru within the sector. Please help me in welcoming the former global e-marketing manager at South African Tourism and now digital maverick and founder of #HackTourism, William Price. Morning, William.
Good morning, John.
How are you this morning?
I'm very good, thanks. Very happy to be here in a not so lockdown studio. So
it is amazing. Yeah, isn't our studio awesome?
Love it. It's really cool.
It's incredible. Well, William, I'm sure you're going to tell us a little bit more about the guests that are joining us and the presenters that are joining us this morning. So I'm going to leave you now and leave our audience in your very, very capable hands and allow you to get on with the show. Enjoy it, everybody, and please remember, we're going to be having episode 3 coming up soon, and there'll also possibly be a Q&A at the end of the session, depending on how we go from a time point of view. But we had to spend the morning with you. Enjoy it. Over to you, William.
Thank you so much. So it's been quite an exciting time for us to try and upgrade our game when it comes to the webinar series, and I think you'll agree that the new environment is something that we're quite excited about and been struggling not to talk about. To my left, a very esteemed gentleman who's spent a lot of time in business, particularly from a coaching perspective, and we really wanted to hear from him today because I think from a business perspective and from a tourism perspective, what we're going through in these uncertain times requires some real expert knowledge and insight, and we're very happy to have you here this morning, Brent. So thank you for agreeing to participate.
Thank you.
You've got a few slides that you're going to be sharing with us today.
Indeed.
I think it's definitely interesting time for business. Business is changing, and we can't continue to do things the way we always have done them in the past. And I think for today, I'm really interested to hear what advice and insights you have to share with our audience. So I really want you to just feel comfortable and welcome.
Thank
Take
you.
it easy.
I'll take it easy.
You're here because we really appreciate your perspective. I've had the opportunity to work with Brent on a few projects and also seen his work in action live, and it's been really rewarding. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, William.
No pressure.
No pressure. May I?
You may take the stage.
Good,
Thank
good.
you so much.
So I think the starting point is that I'm not in tourism or hospitality. I think that I'm a tourist of business. I like to float in and out of businesses and understand what works for them, what are their trends, what are their impacts and risks around each different kinds of businesses, from technology businesses right through to Apple farmers. So a global perspective of different kinds of businesses, different industries, and different sectors. So what I want to talk to you today about is my current experience. Can we load the slides? So this is me a couple of weeks ago. I'm probably one of the last sort of global tourists in the current circumstances. I was fortunate enough to be in Europe a couple of days before lockdown started in Europe, and it was my first insight into what was going to be this pandemic. The day before we had to leave, the people who owned the little pension that we were staying at, who are third generation husband and wife owners of this property, told us that they had to shut down the property and kick us out the following day. And I was lucky enough to see some of the hard conversations that they were having with their staff, telling them that they had no job from tomorrow and didn't know when they were going to come back. These were the first insights of what was going to be this global pandemic. So what I would like to do today is just talk to you a little bit about the experience I've seen across multiple businesses and how you can review your business and change your mindset going forward. I'm going to steal something I saw on another webinar by a guy called Richard Mulholland. I'm probably going to hash this a little bit, but it's a great little insight in terms of a thinking piece. What he said was, during the beginning of this COVID pandemic, was we've all got into the car and loaded Google Maps to take us to our destination. We know where we're leaving from, and we know where we're going to, the destination. Along the route, we see something ahead that looks like a roadblock. So what do? We veer left. And as we veer left, that lovely lady on Google Maps is going, make a U-turn, make a U-turn, make a U-turn. And at some point, we realize that we can no longer make a U-turn. And Google then readjusts our route and decides to take us a different way to the same destination. Now, for a long time, and some of us are still in this mindset, that make a U-turn to go back to what was, the way we were going, is no longer an option for us. We have to decide to pick a new path to get to the same destination, all right? Same destination, different route. It was Charles Darwin that said that survival is determined by the ability to adapt to your circumstances, Darwinism. And the only difference between Darwinism and COVID is the sudden change in the environment. Darwinism talks about a long, slow evolution, where COVID has been a sudden change to everything we know and understand. So we've all been exposed to IQ and EQ at some point of our lives. The new Q you've got to worry about is CQ, which is your change quotient. This is your ability to change and adapt to your environment, okay? So COVID is an accelerant. It has brought the future forward in most of our industries. What was bound to happen has happened just a hell of a lot quicker. So in my opinion, IQ and EQ were the most important things to keep your business, alive and viable. And now the new thing, which is CQ, which is your change quotient, is actually more important than your IQ and EQ combined. So your CQ is you doing new things and new ways of doing your business, right? It's adopting new technologies, understanding the new competitions, the new roles, and the new services and products that you require. If we look back at like September 11, 9/11, it put a lot of businesses out of business. Those were the businesses that could not adapt to the new environment. The internet in itself has been a very slow pandemic. The internet has put businesses out of businesses that could not adapt. So you have all been tadpoles swimming in a pond of tourism and hospitality. And what I'm asking you to now think about doing is change yourself from being that tadpole to being a transformed into a frog. You are the same animal in the same pond, the same DNA, but just a new shape and a new form. What I'm not asking you to do is to become a foster tadpole or a thinner tadpole or a skinnier tadpole. I want you to transform completely into a frog. Okay, same animal, same DNA, new shape, new form. This is going to take a serious long-term commitment on your behalf in order to make this change. I want to go back to my old business. Now, I ran a business for 17 years, and for 15 years of that business, my business was absolutely bulletproof. It made money year after year, no matter what happened in the environment. At its peak, we had about 80 million rands in revenue. We had about 300 staff, a sales team of 30 to 40 people. We had 19 properties around the country. And for 15 years, this business month on month was profitable. Then what happened was in early 2008, 2009, I had my COVID. And my COVID was something that I should have seen because I should have done the risk analysis on my business. What happened was there were fires in Russia, which had an economic impact on the moratorium of export of edible oils. So my oil price went up. We had a drought, so we couldn't procure and process fruit at the same price. We had long-term commitments to partners. We had very high overheads in terms of space and people. We had a 5-month strike. This image is part of the cases that we landed up firing lots of staff through the CCMA because of doing an illegal strike. So I had a whole bunch of the perfect storms of risk that took out my business. That was my COVID, okay? I never saw it coming, but it affected me. So what actually happened was I went from my own personal net asset value of about 20 million rand, I went down about 12 million rand, which was the best money I ever spent. And during that period, I gained 4,000 Twitter followers because that's what I spent my time doing. I hated my business. I just wanted to do something else, and I watched my business tank. And I gave 0 fucks, excuse the F-bomb. So the point being is that every single business at some point in their history is going to have a high risk and impact. And whether it's COVID or whether it's something else, you have to make sure that you are analyzing the risks around your business all the time. I want to talk to social media and the adoption of tech as a rule. And I want to use one simple example, it's one of many, as to why you should be adopting technology in order to market yourself better. So globally, obviously the biggest business in the world is Amazon. And what Amazon is now doing is disrupting the traditional advertising space in a very unique way. This is the example. Amazon have a product called Prime Second Box. What they are doing is when you are ordering online via type or via, dear Alexa, I'd like to order something via voice, what Amazon is doing is it's giving you a second option in terms of the product. So the example is, dear Alexa, please give me sunlight, green liquid for my house to wash my dishes. Alexa will respond saying, we have sunlight for you at price, let's call it 20 Rand. We also have an Amazon house brand at 15 Rand. Which would you like? Now, if you decide that you would like the house brand, you get the house brand delivered to you. If you decide you still want the brand, Sunlight, that you've been accustomed to, and you want to use the brand that you love and trust for so many years, what they'll do is they'll send you the Sunlight, but they're also going to send you the 15 Rand cheaper alternative. And they're also going to send a second box. And the second box is there for you to put the products you don't want back in, and they will collect that for you. Now, the reality is we're incredibly lazy as humans. And what this means is that we are most likely not going to return the second product. We're going to keep the house brand. And once we've tested that house brand, we find that it actually works, and it is actually quite a lot cheaper than the bigger brand, we're never going back to the brands. So what Amazon is doing is they're killing off all the brands we, for multi-generations, have learned to love. Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Kraft, Nestle. It's the sunlights, it's the toilet papers, it's the white soaps, it's the dog foods. The stuff that we don't like queuing for is the stuff they're going to wipe out those brands. They're putting their brands in your home. Incredibly powerful. Now, why is this important to you? The reason I'm telling you this is that if they're killing off the Procters and Gambles of the world and those brands, P&G is the biggest advertiser in the world. They are the guys that have managed to keep the TV, the print, the radio industry alive. Those places are dying because of examples like this, which means the place that you used to advertise to your clients is no longer relative. Okay, it's no longer sustainable, and your clients will no longer be on those platforms. So this is one example why digital is being so transformative in terms of where you need to be seen and advertising. Now, during the entire COVID pandemic, what has been fascinating to me is that the entire economy globally and all the stock markets have fundamentally been wiped out, except for the large tech businesses. Now, this is a stat from Amazon, and during the COVID period, Amazon have been up 6%, and since beginning of the year have grown 33% in the stock market. Now, the question is, why is everyone else taking pain except for the tech businesses? The reason being is they own what I call the rails. They own the reason and the way in which all stuff is being delivered. They own the supply chain. So what you need to be aware of is that Amazon is also a massive media player. They're now having Amazon Prime that's competing with the likes of Netflix. And they're stealing lots of advertising money for people to advertise on their platform. So the reason I'm telling you this is that one of the big trends that I'm expected to see is that the large businesses like Expedia, which own a massive chunk of the online travel and tourism infrastructure, they own things like hotels.com, Trivago, Travelocity. They are prime and ripe for some kind of takeover. Now, the likes of Amazon have to keep growing in value and adding value to their shareholders and their share price. And they cannot grow fast enough besides go big game hunting, which means buy into new revenue streams and new industries, okay? The likes of Amazon are moving into medicine, where the likes of Apple are moving into the likes of education. And I believe that the likes of Expedia are probably going to be taken over by a tech business like Amazon, making the environment even less competitive for you to succeed. One of the other predictions I have is that insurance, like medicine and like higher education, has been ready for, and I hate the word, disruption for a very long time, okay? It's primed for tech to take over. And what you're going to see is that there's no longer going to be middlemen, brokers, and travel agencies making money selling insurance. The person who's going to do the traveling should be able to have direct access to buy their own insurance. And I think that some of the suppliers, like the hotels and the restaurants and people that are being exposed to the tourism industry, will also have the availability to start selling insurance directly through tech platforms. Now, when you think of the horrific images of the Twin Towers falling, a lot of that provokes similar feelings of stress that COVID has brought on. Now, 9/11, the Zika virus, yellow fever, and that Icelandic volcano that no one can pronounce have all been massive movements of improvements in tourism in hindsight, right? The pandemic is not without precedence. This pandemic has happened before and it will happen again. But the good news is that every crisis does come to an end, right? This crisis is not new to everybody, but it may be new to you. What you need to be doing is asking yourselves, what are the new safety trends that will result from COVID, and how can you exploit this without selling masks, okay? What is the sustainable models that will come out of the back of COVID that you can make money? One of the things that still blows my mind is the fact that our passport is made of paper, that in this incredibly virtual tech world that we have a paper-based passport. So the tech upgrades from biometric testings to the way we are medically tested for travel is going to change. Paperless passports is incredibly antiquated, and that's going to change, right? So virtual tours and online communities are going to be the common things. I see the Serengeti are now offering a daily game drive. So all of these things are becoming quite obvious as the new trends in the interim, and potentially may become long-lasting in some forms of fact. So the question is, what do I do now? Like, what is the plan? What's the game plan? So when you go forward, there are 3 categories that you need to be thinking around how you change your behavior. The first one is, what can you absolutely change today? What is the impact that you can make in your environment and in your job? The second one is, what are the things that you cannot particularly make a change on, but potentially you can influence change of behavior? And the last one is, what can you change your behavior toward that you know you cannot make a change? So if you think of it in 3 concentric circles, the middle one is make a change. The second circle is, what can I influence around me? And the third one is change your behavior towards what you cannot actually make a change to. So the first step is stay out of the middle. Now, in South Africa, we have 3 very large retail supply chains. We have Woolworths, we have Pick n Pay, and we have Shoprite. Now, in that scenario, Shoprite own the bottom end. They are the cheapest. They have the most amount of stores. They supply the bottom end, the poorest of the poor, with the retail day-to-day stuff. They own that space. At the top end, we have Woolworths. This is an example of guys selling highly expensive, very convenient foods, and they have a very particular market for it. In the middle, somewhere lost in the middle, is Pick n Pay. They're neither the top nor the bottom, and they're being squeezed from both sides. Now, in tourism, something similar is going to happen. The top-end luxury brands, if you're thinking like Mr. and Mrs. Smith online, they are going to be, with all their bells and whistles, successful and will continue to thrive. The flip side is that once the government start unlocking international travel and allowing people to move across borders, there's going to be a massive price war at the bottom end of the market, okay? There's going to be tons and tons of people looking for bargains. Those bargain hunters are out there to spend their money. So what's important here is you need to cater for the very rich, top-end, super luxury brand or the very bottom, high volume. And at the bottom, we often have the youth. Now, in terms of COVID, the youth are less impacted by COVID from a health perspective. They're also about to enter a buying power economy, so they're about to start earning money and hopefully traveling. And you could start building your engagement with the youth of today to ensure that you have a much longer runway of loyal people and consumers that could spend money with you. So stay out the middle. What you also need to do is get really close to technologies, right? Understand which technologies are game changers and are going to unlock real value in your business, and get close to those people, right? Become familiar with all the different kinds of media and the paid medias and the social medias, and use them and exploit them for your own benefit. You also need to build relationships with these tech platforms and other kinds of marketing platforms where possible, okay? You also need to think about what your online and video testimonials look like. These are more important than ever before. I also want you to think horizontally. I'm talking about collaborations and relationships, right? I want you to think around, if you're a hotel, do you partner with a dive center? If you're a coffee shop, do you partner with a motorbike dealer? What does it look like in your ecosystem, okay? How do you allow other people to enter your space and benefit from each other in a succinct way? Other great examples are platforms like WeRoam and Unsettled that are building tourism businesses for the gig economy, where you are able to be set up with offices, food, network, entertainment, and accommodation, and they're owning everything on a horizontal basis. So when I talk about the horizontal space, you need to make sure that you are partnering, collaborating with complementary services to yours. I also think you can start thinking vertically. So vertically means owning the supply chain and everything that's delivered within your business. So it's things like owning the media, owning your bookings to collections of people from the airports, all the entertainment, all the transport, all the insurance, your food, your cleaning, every single touch point in the experience of your client's tourism or hospitality experience. Can you own, or which parts of those can you actually own and control? And one of the most important things I want you to think about is that you are now a marketing business, regardless of what your service or product offering is, okay? So you have to act like a marketing business. You have to understand marketing intrinsically, and you have to embrace social media and experiment on all the platforms, which includes the likes of the new TikToks, understanding how to use WhatsApp effectively for marketing, and get onto all like the Slack channels that are out there, and use everything outside of the obvious channels as well. What's important about online is that you have to start creating content. There's the 1-9-90 rule, which says that 1% create content, 9% disseminate content, and 90% consume. The 90% is your consumer. It's the people that will spend money with you, right? you have to start creating all kinds of video, all kinds of interesting content. And there's a great acronym for it. It's called PIES, P-I-E-S. You need to make sure your content is practical, inspirational, educational, and sexy. But the most important thing is you have to be the 1%. You need to start creating tons of content for SEO, that's search engine optimization, and being able to be found online. Now, when we talk about content, there's a great saying that says, if content is king, distribution is the kingdom. And now we all think about content in the likes of like Netflix. But Netflix has a real problem, is that it doesn't own what I refer to as the rails, okay? In order for you to access Netflix, you have to watch it on Amazon Prime or Apple TV or a Samsung Smart TV or some kind of application that they don't own, like Google. So I want you to think about what are the rails in your environment that you can own or partner with. And ideally, you want to own them in terms of your owned assets like your websites. So own as much online content as you can possibly do and work out what are those rails that you can own in your industry or build those rails. COVID is to tourism what Netflix was to the video store, just a hell of a lot quicker. So another way to get yourself recognized is to do something like start a movement, okay? And make it public and build ambassadors that are going to help you become seen and aware and trusted on the online space. And don't be afraid to fail. I heard something beautiful this week that someone said that if your Airbnb property fails in a forest, does anyone hear it? Does anyone care? And the answer is no. The other thing as well is that you have to own page 1 of Google. That means every single thing on Google needs to talk to you and your service. If I type your name in or I type your service in, I want to make sure that I'm seeing everything that you own. That talks about your website, any kind of online exposure or public relations exposure, your own social media exposure, and possibly some paid Google advertising, which is relatively cheap, and think of it as your online billboard. One of the great trends that's going to come out of COVID is local is lacquer. Where you're going to see, if you think about the way you're going to spend your money and you're going to travel, you're going to fly less, you're going to drive more, which means you've got to cater for the local market, okay? People are looking for local holidays and experiences with an international budget, which allows you for some margin to play with there because people are used to spending a couple of grand on flights, all right? So you need to localize your values, localize your content, localize your marketing narrative, and make sure you're speaking to the local market because this is where your money will come from in the short term. It may be quite some time until the Germans come back to Cape Town. You have the opportunity now more than ever to access the gig economy. These are freelancers that are online that are able to provide services at very, very affordable rates to you. I want you to think about how do you find a global sales team that are on call on a commission basis. Okay, you need to be ruthless with cost cutting at the moment, and finding people that are freelancers and experts in the space will allow you to grow your business with an agile variable overhead. The other thing you've got to think about is what are the problems that you're still trying to solve that are no longer a problem in your business? This is called legacy thinking. Okay, it's time to reestablish what do your clients actually want again? What services do they really want from you, and what is your value proposition? Okay, what are you offering them? I have a great example where I currently have a client who is an accountant who still has the requirement to go to his clients' offices because traditionally the software sat on a local server. Even though that is no longer relative, the performance or the trend of going to see the client still exists. So he's solving a problem that no longer is actually a problem in the business. So what are the problems? What is the legacy thinking in your business that you need to stop and change, okay? So what actions and tactics are you still holding on to because they worked back then, pre-COVID, that is no longer a problem anymore? And take off that bias, remove that mask, take off the blinkers. Knock, knock, who's there? Opportunity. There is opportunity everywhere, okay? I want you to think in terms of an onion. There are layers and layers and layers. So the first layer was we had the first impact of COVID and everybody went and sold masks. That was the first opportunity. But over time, more and more layers will become unlocked in this crisis. Now, I don't know if you saw that last week, Hertz, which owns Dollar and Thrifty globally, went into Chapter 11. They're insolvent. They've retrenched the first 10,000 staff, which is about a quarter of their staff. And that is horrific in its own. But it unlocks a huge amount of opportunity. So airlines taking pain is level 1. Avis and Hertz taking pain is level 2. But the knock-on effect of that is that these companies have thousands and thousands of cars. Those cars are sitting in parking lots near airports. So what are they going to do with those cars? What are they going to do with those airports, those properties? So there's opportunity in doing something with those cars or doing something with those properties. And that's where the knock-on effect is, where you need to be opening your eyes to what is the next wave, the next ripple, and how do I get ahead of that wave and make sure that I can find the opportunity there. Another great example in this kind of thinking is that the restaurant trade has taken huge pain, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a ton of restaurants on auction selling off their equipment, their tables, their chairs, and all their coffee machines. The opportunity could be buy that stuff and ship it into Africa or ship it into other BRIC economies. So think beyond what you're comfortable with and look at the other opportunities and outside of your comfort zone. I don't know how many of you remember this. This is very pre-digital. This is something called an Etch-a-Sketch. There was a mechanical toy that was built in the 1950s by a Frenchman. It had 2 little knobs that moved the stylus, and that stylus moved aluminium powder around the screen, and you were able to draw lines, leaving a solid line, and be quite creative on that. For me as a kid, this thing was magic. But what the magic thing was that you could just turn upside down, shake it, and have a brand new screen, okay? The powder was removing what was there in the past, and you had the opportunity to now draw outside of the lines again, okay? So I want you to reimagine a world where it's shaken upside down and you have a blank canvas to start again, okay? You will never regret trying something new. You will only ever regret not trying anything at all, okay? I want you to now look at this as an opportunity to envision your lives as a world turned upside down with that powder redistributed, okay? COVID has opened opportunities for a better life. It's potentially a rebirth, a rejuvenation, a reincarnation, and a reinvention, okay? It's time to embrace the change. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so
I tend to have drifted a bit.
yes, you have drifted a little over the stage there,
Good.
but thanks. So Brent, I think you went through very quickly and there was a lot of content that you covered.
Yes.
I'm very interested. Let's go a little back to the whole thing about you're a tadpole, the pool hasn't changed much, but you now need to do this transformation, right? So businesses literally need to say, how am I going to pivot? What's going to work for me now in this new normal, which, by the way, I hate that because it shouldn't be.
It's the new abnormal.
Exactly.
Right.
So let's just talk a little bit about some practical examples there. I think with your kind of exposure across a much broader business spectrum, what are the things that people are actually starting to go, well, what if I think differently, if I act differently, what does that then start to do for the problems that I'm going to be solving now? Because the problems that we need to solve are different, right?
Sure. So I think that a few things that you shouldn't be doing, right, is that I think everyone has jumped on the short-termism of selling PPE equipment, that sort of stuff. I don't think that's the answer. I also don't believe that every business needs to be an e-commerce business. I mean, obviously some businesses can't be, but I do think that I talk about the jumping on to understanding the new media landscape, and it's not that new anymore, but really adopting that I think is crucial. And I also sometimes think that you need to step away from, I talk about your biases, right? So you've come into this with what worked in the past. And I do believe that examples are where you need to just imagine you were starting a new business today without what worked in the past and reapply your mind differently to practical solutions, okay? And I think what you would do with that is that with any kind of new strategy, the first piece is the research piece, to actually really understand what is the problem that you are actually solving today. And I mean, there's always only 2 reasons that you ever start a business. Is that something that no one else is doing, or you can do it better, faster, cheaper, quicker, whatever that looks like. So I think understanding where you play today and what the new requirements are is a research piece. And, you know, I can't speak to a particular sector of the industry because obviously it's very varied. But, you know, I think that the way that we are behaving has changed. So if you think about restaurants, everyone's jumped on the home delivery. And that will be fine for now, but as unlock gets, you know, softened and we go back to some kind of new abnormal, people will re-engage. But what does the new restaurant look like? And step away from what it always used to be. What does the new movie theater look like? Is drive-ins going to become a new thing again? Like those are the new opportunities. So content, different format. Serving food in a different environment, a different way. And I'm not talking about wearing masks or putting up screens. I'm thinking about what kind of new experiences are new that are actually exciting, entertaining, and solving the COVID problem potentially. And over time, I think humans, we tend to forget how quickly we go back to old habits. And even though 21 days change a habit, we've had more than 21 days of this. I think that a lot of what we used to do from our ego perspective in buying and showing off and being social, that's going to come back slowly and hopefully quicker than we think. So I do think it's around, don't try and just solve for COVID, try and solve for a whole new experience. What does that look like?
Very cool. So a couple of comments. I noticed that you hate the word disruption.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Well, I think that it's one of those jargon sort of, hip words.
Overtraded.
And disruption never happens from within the industry. Okay, so if you look at all the traditional disruptions, they always happen with someone completely left field that's come in and killed it, right? So like no one saw Netflix and the video store, which is the example we talk about. But I often think that what happens is that there were things that were going to happen over time invariably, like they were just bound to happen. So I do think that disruption is the wrong word. I'm looking for your business has been disrupted now, not because you wanted it to. So what does self-disruption look like? How do you look at yourself and go, right, I need to cannibalize my own business and take COVID off the table as though it never happened? How would I have done that differently now? Okay, and reapply that. So force yourself to change your business model, force yourself to think about your products and services differently, and don't use COVID as the blinder. Yes, you're feeling pain right now, but I want you to think about it as though there was no COVID and you had to make a different approach, different change. What would you do differently?
Oh, very cool. So a couple of things that I've noticed. I think the way that people are going to travel, because of what we saw happening at 9/11 and how that disrupted and changed global travel, additional security measures, etc. A lot of that's going to make international travel and long haul or even short haul travel very, very difficult, very, very cumbersome, very, very uncomfortable for people to do. So I think there's going to be a big shift between, do people really want to travel far? Is it really the experience outside of business travel? Is it really the experience that's worth all of that effort? And remembering that we're going to do that kind of curve again, right? There's going to be a lot of discomfort at the beginning, and then as people get more and more comfortable and as flights increase, et cetera, things are going to become a little bit easier for people to do. But I really enjoyed what you were saying about local is lacquer. I think that's an important thing for us from a domestic tourism perspective to look at as well.
So I think that there's a few things for me. I think that like biometrics and the ease of which we, instead of queuing in airports, I think they're going to automate a big piece of that. I think that the big disruption is not so much tourism, but I think it's business travel. I think what's happened now is businessmen have realized this sort of environment works. This is actually a more efficient meeting. We can do this without traveling. We don't need to get on a plane and spend stupid money going to see our clients or suppliers. We can do it remotely. So I think that's going to take a long time because businesses are all around efficiency. So when they realize this is actually more efficient and actually saves us money, we're never going to go back to wasting cash. As a business, it's inherently what we're against, wasting cash. So I think business travel is going to take a very long time. I do think that a much slower and probably never back to the numbers where it was before. Where I think tourism is what people want to do is they want to have a break from work and enjoy something and experience. That will bounce a bit quicker, hopefully. And also think that we've forgotten around, like, you go to India, you need a yellow fever injection. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. You get a shot, get on the plane and you go. You rock up, you need a little certificate to say you've had it. This is going to be COVID in a year or two. Like, I think that we underestimate how quickly we're going to adapt and move on. And there could be another phase of COVID. There could be another outbreak or another version of it for sure. But I think that we adapt fairly quickly. And the economy, the tourism and hospitality have been incredibly, adaptive to crisis in the past. I do think that the airline industry is going to take pain. The likes that we're seeing, the likes of a Hertz, which is a global brand, collapse is catastrophic. But I do think what's going to happen is that off the back of that, Uber's going to survive, okay? So what you'll find is that instead of catching or booking it, you're just going to catch a taxi via Uber. So the money will change. The people will still get employed because the requirement will still be there in future. Just the way in which we engage or think about it will change. And as I say, I think business travel is going to be the longest to get back to some kind of normality.
Cool. Thank you so much. Last thing I want you just to comment on. I noticed that in following your feed, you'll be talking about Sir Thrive.
Sir Thrive. So thrival is an interesting combination of survive and thrive. And initially, what I had a problem was that a lot of my clients were like, "How do we survive this? How do we survive this?" And initially, I was entertaining that conversation. I was like, "Okay, this is how you cut costs. Keep selling, like survive." And actually what's come out of this is that the guys that went, hang on a second, I don't want to survive. This is really an opportune time. I really couldn't grow here. We can actually thrive. And it's a mindset. They decided that they're going to adapt a new way. Buying media was cheaper than ever before. Access to sales meetings, cheaper than before. Having webinars and getting CEOs on the webinar, which you could never do before, was now accessible. The breakdown of the, I can now see your kids in the background, and there's a real sense of we're in this together, help the sales process. So the guys that changed their mindset during this process, during this period, actually landed up doing more than surviving. They've actually been thriving. There's been a handful of clients that are they're in the same industry as everyone else is, but their mindset is different, and they're actually in a thriving mindset. So I just took the two together and put it survival, is a stupid word, right? But the point being is that a lot of this has got to do with your mindsets. And I understand that certain industries and certain businesses are absolutely, destroyed by this, and there's very little you can do about it right now. But a lot of that, instead of sitting your ass and moping and being depressed, is changing the way you think about it and going out there and engaging and trying to figure out what that new model is and where the new money lies. And the money is moving sideways. There's no question about it. The economy may be shrinking, but there's tons of money that's floating in different directions. Get ahead of that wave, figure out what that trend is in your business and where you can make money there. And you can make money for sure.
That's fantastic. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I think if you need to reach out to Brent, otherwise known as Spilly, that's Spilly with 3 L's, we're going to make sure that all his contact details are available to you. And really thank you for the time.
Thanks, William.
Really appreciate your insight, and very happy that you haven't left us hanging. I think that's really, really awesome. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
So I know we have someone far, far away standing by. You'll notice that he is very excited to share his location and also just some of his experience and insight. We've had him panic this week. He's really jumped at it, and very grateful to have you join us today, Prakash Patel has been living in ad land for a very long time. I've had the privilege also to work with him, as I have with all of the speakers today. I'm really excited to hear him talk a little bit about the strategy and also the application of those strategic ideas and thoughts. He's coming live to us all the way from Franschhoek. I'm really excited to have you here today, Prax. Thank you for joining us. And please, would you go ahead and blow us away?
Good morning, world. Well, let's start there. Let me share my... Can we all see me and hear me, hopefully?
Yeah, you look good.
Look good. With my white beard. Awesome. Right.
So,
let's, yeah. Okay. Look, first of all, I think what you guys are doing with the other side is absolutely fantastic. I think you're allowing people to be connected or reconnected with like-minded people, and especially people who are very passionate about something that we all feel. That's the first thing, which I think is absolutely incredible. So thank you, John and William, for actually organizing this to make it happen. And secondly, thank you for inviting me to talk. So this weekend, like you said, you did get me panicked, William, with regards to doing this talk this weekend. By chance, surprisingly, one of my twins came running upstairs while I was working this weekend saying, Dad, I found this book. And it was a leather-bound book of when I really got the travel bug, all 21 years ago. And in this book, I traveled from England to Singapore, to Australia, to New Zealand, to India, to half the world. I literally took a half-year sabbatical. So I was going through a very, very tough time back in 1999. And I saw these great images, and it just gave me this whole feeling of what we're probably all feeling right now. And you've been talking about it right now, William and Spilly, about the new norm. And there's nothing more than I want for my children than actually going out there and having the freedom of grabbing a plane or getting onto a plane, getting into a bus with a rucksack and traveling the world. It is one of the most beautiful luxuries that any of us could ever have. So for all of us, if we can all collaborate regards to what this new norm is, how to get these borders open again, and how do we do it safely, I think that's what we're all striving to do. That's just my quick introduction regards to how I felt this weekend. Regards to discussion points, I'd love to take you all through is 4 quick points. One is a very, very quick look at the strategic impact of COVID-19. We all know it. We all watch the news to the point where we've been overloaded with so much conversations and so much gloom and doom. I think we've had enough of it, but I've got some startling stats which I'd love to share with you. I'd then love to talk to you about sharing what small places, thank you to my daughter for bringing my coffee, sharing what small places like a village like Franschhoek's doing in regards to the outbreak of COVID-19 since the lockdown. Then take you through some very quick top 10 tips regards to engagement. And then something I like to end with a cliffhanger, like you said, William, is what I'm talking about, the creative thought starter to stimulate some tourism. And Spilly, I think you spilled the beans there a little bit, but we'll come back onto that later. So they're the 4 key points I want to talk about. The first one, again, the strategic view. Let's start by this. It's a very 10-second quick snippet of once upon a time, there was a thriving industry. I've stopped there because it's a minute-long video, and I didn't waste the time in regards to the video, which I'll send a link to because there's a great video by UNWTO. But let's just end there. From 1980, I've got stats going back to 1950, to where we sit currently in regards to 2018 and predicted for 2030. In fact, for 2019, I think they classify, I think we had 1.5 billion international tourists. So the prediction pre-COVID-19 looked like this. 1.5 international tourist arrivals in 2019, a 4% increase on the previous year. That's a great percentage increase if you look at the GDP, looking on inflation and global stats regards to the economy. 4% as an industry sector is actually incredible. One thing it did was confirming tourism as a leading and resilient economic sector with a prediction of over 300 million growth over the next 10 years. And that's what it looked like. Then bang, as you said, we're all of a sudden, I think way back in February, started hearing snippets about COVID-19 and all this. But since March, COVID-19 really hit every single shore around the world. And the term never heard before was called lockdown. It's the first time ever in the world have we all been told to stay at home. So for now, we stay at home, but we will travel again. And when we do, we will do so more consciously, more sustainably, and with a greater feeling of solidarity than ever before. One thing lockdowns taught a lot of humans is that we've been confined into our own spaces, confined into our own thinking of the world we live, the world we created, and there's a sense of appreciation that we never had before. Just watching the birds and listening to the birds in the morning had a complete new meaning. Looking through your windows and looking at the mountain, looking at your backyard, looking at your neighbor's house, wherever you lived in the world, there's a view from your window. And it was a view of we've been given this instruction to some extent by the governing laws that we are in lockdown. So at one point, it's being reported that at least 50%, that's roughly 3.9 billion people of the global population were under some form of coronavirus lockdown. And the classic word you saw everywhere around the whole wide world was stay home if you can. What that meant, we don't know, but never in my 52 years or my life or even my parents' life have we ever seen anything like this. And hopefully never again. We actually put the whole world on stop, reset, where do you want to go? But here's a prediction now, based on what's happened, and the question that we're all asking, how do we move forward? So if we look at the figures that we're talking about, it's now been reported that the COVID-19 stay-home lockdown is going to reduce international tourism by 1.1 billion people. That's globally in 2020. That's a difference of between 58 and 80%. It's all based on different stats regards to depending when the borders open. If they open in June, July, August, September, or December, there's different predictions. But based on the current stats, this is what it looks like. And here's a holy hashtag number for you that I spoke to John and William about yesterday that literally blew my mind. And that is the whole cycle of tourism is being wiped out by this pandemic. And literally COVID-19 has just taken us back 30 years of international travel growth. We're at the same figure as we were in 1990, of roughly 400 million international travelers to where we were last year at 1.5 billion. So the hard facts we all know, from a booming year-on-year growth industry, we are now at an all-time low. International tourism is now equal to 1919 figures. Sectors are close to an 80 to 100% decline in revenue. Lockdown may have flattened the curve, but killing or even killed many businesses. Most destinations relied and enjoyed international travelers now have zero revenue for the foreseeable future. It's now time to reset, reinvent, rebuild, and re-engage with ourselves, with our partners, with our business people, with our world and the way we actually live it. So however, we have an opportunity in doing so by reimagining a more sustainable future from the scratch. It's exactly what it says, Silly, in the sense that it's like a white canvas we've been given as an opportunity. What it becomes and what we sketch regards to our path forward. And I loved your analogy about the Google Maps. We were swerving left, we're swerving right. And we know we can't go forward. There is new routes that we can create, and that's up to us. So based on that, one thing that is absolutely paramount is that every single sector, every single business, every single human being is currently in what we call survival mode. What now? How do we survive it, and how do we actually move forward? Based on that, again, I echo the same thing. We all got to be positive. There is going to be a new norm. And where that new norm will become the normal. And then a new normal will happen again, and it'll keep continuing throughout our lives. But one thing I love with a quote from Albert Einstein, I probably use in every single presentation we've ever done, because I think it talks about positivity in a different way. It's looking for the black swan on the lake. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunities. And I'm not sitting here in a naive position, because there's some people's business that's just been wiped out and they will not be able to recover from it. And that's just the fact of life. But if you open your mind to looking for new opportunities, that's where the beauty actually lies. So the second thing I want to talk about, and I spoke to William about it, I think about a couple of weeks ago, is, what does survival look like? And I thought I'd just use a great case study, what I've seen unfold over the last 9 weeks in our little village called Franschhoek. And I'll start here. We are locked up, but everyone needs to take the necessary steps to adequately prepare for recovery, while also setting proper expectations to what survival and success will look like. So locally, as reality, Franschhoek is it's quite a unique little village. It has one way in, one way out. It can be classified as one of the most beautiful villages in the world. It has the most gourmet food, the most incredible wine, and a very, very mixed population of people. It's made up of what they call locally as swallows, people who fly out. But one thing, like the rest of the world, the impact is that we've had 100% decline in any international, let alone domestic travelers. If you walk through Franschhoek now in the morning to get to Pick n Pay or wherever shop you go to, it's a ghost town. It is empty. You see a few people scurrying up and down. Only in the last week and a half to 2 weeks have shops been allowed to open to sell essential items. But again, like the rest of the world, there's empty hotels, empty B&Bs and backpackers and restaurants and boutiques and coffee shops and retailers. And every single one of them are sitting there with rent due, bonds to be paid, and no money coming in. But what about now? And what actually happened was, they say when you talk about, I looked into Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans over 10 years ago, and how did they recover? And they all talk about survival mode. And one thing everyone talks about is what they call step one. The first major step to bringing tourists back to any destination is taking care of your basic needs. And the first of these being protecting your own community, protecting your own people, the people that actually make your destination what it is. It's the local is lekker, it's the local language, it's the localism. It's what makes us unique. And if we don't look after that, all this infrastructure, we don't actually even have a destination post-lockdown. But what happened in Franschhoek was actually, I think it just happened. It wasn't planned to happen this way. It wasn't planned to evolve into this. But there's a number of key players in Franschhoek. And let me take a couple of people in a sense, and there's a lot more here. But as a quick analogy, what the chefs of Franschhoek did, and these are the chefs who are earning zero income now. These are the chefs whose restaurants are completely closed. They closed their front doors to the fine dining 5-star food they've been delivering for decades to paying customers, to now only open up their back door to feeding the local community through donations and careful planning. And to me, that was just absolutely incredible. It wasn't planned like that, but there was this whole feeling of being a community, the feeling of sharing, the feeling of responsibility. And absolutely, there's been some true champions and drivers like Margot and Chris and Ashley, who's in charge of what we call disaster management, renamed as Together Franschhoek. Margot set up a charity over 13 years ago called Isabella about feeding children in the local community. And Chris owns one of the most awarded kind of restaurants in Franschhoek called Village. Let me just play his videos. It's only 1 minute, but it gives you an essence of what they're doing.
We have a WhatsApp group in Franschhoek with all the chefs on it. We share suppliers. If anybody needs anything, they put it on the group and we'll sort you out immediately. So we had a platform. We've been feeding the firemen whenever the big fires would break out. So we just started. We just fell in. We couldn't just set up a soup kitchen where people can go and sit in a hall and feed them out of a pot. That's exactly what we don't want.
So there are now 5 kitchens in Franschhoek that have opened their doors, and everybody's kind of processing the vegetables, chopping, roasting, and then we bring them all to one kitchen where we're turning it into a final kind of stew, a soup. We really are aiming not just to make food, but to make nutritious and very tasty food.
Our households at the moment is about 2,600 a week. It went from 190 in the beginning of last week. It can triple.
We are packing in 500 ml tubs. And then we freeze those. I believe today we've sent out over 1,000 frozen meals. And on top of that, we are also doing dried food packs. So we are packing, I think this week we are. The future is uncertain for all of us. But can you imagine not having food and not having money and not having the prospect of making any money? You can't even go out and earn any money. Well, that gets me up. Keeps me awake as well.
Hi, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I can't get the feedback in regards to how you felt when you heard that video. But that's heartfelt, hey? I mean, that is real story regards what's happening in our backyard right now. These top chefs, these top people are now feeding the local community with the same love that they gave to paying diners. And that's what's quite beautiful. So again, it's not just the chefs, it's the Ladies Lions Club of Franschhoek, there's Franco, there's Together Franschhoek, and there's over 200 plus volunteers and over 20 top chefs all together come together to, in essence, start rebuilding and protecting the community who make up Franschhoek. But it didn't stop there. What they did beyond that, the local volunteers and retailers like Build It, etc., built sanitizing station at taxi ranks to near shops and feeding stations. So it wasn't just about feeding the community, it's also about protecting the community. And again, retailers who are earning no income but paying rent on empty shops right now were donating their stocks. From like Peacock Blue to Hoop, from Build It to all over the place. These were retailers earning zero and again donating clothes and appliances to again protect the community. And then the other great thing that we had was that local farmers in the surrounding areas of Franschhoek all clubbed together, and they have been driving into Franschhoek as a drop-off point bucket loads of their produce directly for the feeding stations. And it carries on. It's like, that's great for now, but what about the future? What happens when it becomes the new norm, becomes the norm? Well, they already started a new thing. A few weeks ago, what they called in one of the posts I read, there were engineers, there were winemakers, there were chefs and waitresses or waiters. They are planting a sustainable future. They've allocated a huge plot just outside of Franschhoek, and what they are doing right now is actually planting for the future. We've all heard the analogy in regards to teach a man to fish and he can eat forever. That's exactly what the philosophy here is in regards to creating a sustainable model moving forward. The most amazing thing about all of this is that this has been done by people's own passion and self-drive. It's not been driven by the government or parastatals or municipalities. This has been driven by people who have a passion and purpose to look after its people and what we call Franschhoek. So the village, known for tasting menus, salmon trouts, bubble and hop-on, hop-off wine tours, is reshifting its whole village. And who knows, Franschhoek could become a national community model and what happens in a crisis situation. So in summary, 100% decline in international, let alone domestic travellers. Response was to immediately look after its people. First and foremost, set up a unified community together. Franschhoek, local NGOs and feeding programs, created a chef's platform where they communicated with one another in real time, instantly. Through that, they shared the spirit of humanity and kindness and coming together in collaboration. And the other thing is, all this content is being produced that is now being shared across all the social media sites. And what it's actually doing indirectly, even though the purpose is to feed and protect and on the survival mode, they provided this incredible library of documentation of what they're doing. And this is being used on social media and posts, and we have lots of local pages like Franschhoek, What's On in Franschhoek, Together Franschhoek, WhatsApp groups. Then there's a Franschhoek Wine Valley Tourism website. Is that this content's being pushed out, and the great thing about this is that we're not just telling each other about it. Lots of the people, over 50% of the people on these sites or going to these websites or Facebook pages or WhatsApp group, part of the WhatsApp group, are our international tourists, are our swallows who are not here right now. They may be back in Germany or back in Netherlands or back in Sweden or England or America or wherever they come from. They're still connected. And what's incredible is that it's also driving donations back into the village because people want to get back to Franschhoek. The comments you read and see a lot is how much they actually miss what they call their second home, Franschhoek. So again, in regards to a snippet, is that we're using digital in a very meaningful way, from the websites to the Facebook pages to the lists of just over the last week and a half, regards on the Franschhoek Tourism website, regards to the list of the restaurateurs who are now doing home deliveries. So people are being kept informed constantly of what's going on, what's happening in Franschhoek. Through that, I woke up a couple of weeks ago with a crazy idea and thinking I'd do a huge projection onto the mountain to thank our frontline heroes, the chefs, the 200 plus strong volunteers. And through that, using classic marketing, get some sponsorship by local businesses to sponsor the logo, and we do a huge laser projection. And what we've actually done is decided to do it on to the church, which is at the heart of Franschhoek Main Road. Hopefully in the next week or two, we actually will be in the next week or two. And to date, we've raised over 50,000 rand with the thanks of the great, generous donors locally and internationally. So the second step they talk about survival is preparing for opening up again. And here's the problem, and I think we all know about it. The big problem that I think we're all facing is that we're not really able to plan for the future. There is no set date for anything. We may wait every 2 weeks regards to what Cyril Ramaphosa, our president, tells us what's going to happen next regards to lockdown. Do we go from 4? Do we go to 3 like we did yesterday? When does it disappear? That's a huge problem when you actually think about how do you actually plan for the future, especially when there's no clear indication. And the truth is, if you listen to people globally and locally, people talk about the future being either 6 months or 18 months. And that's a long period of time in regards to trying to plan. But we have to do something. The solution, I say to people, or business I talk locally, and I'm working quite a lot with local people right now, just to give some advice, is plan for the worst case scenario and aim for the best. But more than anything, start putting together a preventative plan. Revise your business. Take it as a white canvas. If your business just started today, a good example, Chris from Foliage, he believes once this lockdown opens again, he's not going to open Foliage again potentially. It may become a shop where he sells local produce, from the meat to the vegetables, all locally. People are having to reinvent themselves regards to what the future is going to look like. And it's going back to what we spoke about in the first part, how to collaborate with your friends and partners or other businesses in the same vicinity. So what does survival look like? We've got some quick tips. Hopefully most people know about this, but if not, I'm just going to quickly take you through what I call my top 8. Like anything in life, 80% planning, 20% execution. We had to plan for some uncertainty and for the future, but put some kind of plan in place. You need to map out where are you now, where do you think you can be, where are you now financially, what do you need to survive. The critical thing, it also has given us 8 weeks of taking a deep look at our businesses, what has been working, what hasn't been working. And what we need to do is start putting together some kind of framework. It's a great time to review what you have currently in regards to your digital assets. How old is your website? Can it not be updated? What kind of content are you using on your website? What's your social media strategy like? Do you even have a social media page? And the other thing is the ability to start creating exclusive offers. I mean, there's a lot of posts I see right now in regards to business in hospitality and travel offering forward planning offers. And right now with the rand to the pound, we can capitalize on that. But make sure you've got some clear cancellation policy and even negotiate better deals with your OTAs. So number 1, plan, review and revise what you're currently doing. Point 2, social media, one of the cheapest mode of communication. If you think based on a lockdown, that is one place most people have been going to. There's now a term talk about digital distancing, like social distancing. People have had an overload, but most people still spend between 3 to 4 hours a day on social media forms or platforms in one way or another. So regardless of who you are, if you're a small backpacker or a B&B or a hotel or a restaurant or winery, you need to set up a well-structured overall engagement plan and be proactive and stay in contact with your past and future customers. 3 is what I call be selective and relevant. There are so many different social media sites, and obviously the classic being Instagram and Facebook, from YouTube to Pinterest and all that. I'd say rather focus on one than focus on too many. Choose one and make it based on quality versus quantity, and rather working on 2 and being spread regards to manpower or budgets to do more than one. I don't know if I should be reading this, John. The 4th one is an engagement plan. Regardless of your overall content strategy, set up a minimal engagement content plan to keep a conversation going with your current, past and future customers based on your own industry sector. What I mean by this is have some kind of constant drumbeat. It could be what your view is from your hotel room. It could be what you're cooking. It could be whatever is happening around your vicinity right now. But it's a great way of just keeping your past customers connected with who you are. 5, e-commerce. I wrote about this probably for the last 5 years in every paper, every trend paper I've written for all the industry portals. We have been slow off the start with regards to e-commerce, and we still are. I think our biggest problem has been that we've also had a leash on us, even by the government, with regards to restrictions of what can be and cannot be sold online over 2-3 weeks ago. That has been lifted. We have been given a green light, but I was amazed still the amount of business that do not have an e-commerce presence. If you don't have one, I beg and plead, that is one thing you should do. It is one thing that people can still connect to you. So, for example, from a clothing shop to a retailer to a restaurant to a winery, it is one place that people will go to. And if you can offer those products that are legal, not alcohol, tobacco currently, then it's a great way of generating revenue while your bricks and mortars are closed. Your online business can be open. And that is real income that is needed by everybody. 6, Facebook page. I'll be honest, I mean, I've worked in agencies all my life. I've always been fortunate having great teams who create the social media page and make it happen. I, for the first time, created my first Facebook page. It's free, it's quick, and it's easy to do. It is literally 3 clicks and you have a Facebook page. A Facebook page that can showcase your products and your services and get your brand out there. It's a very easy way to boost your pages. Again, you can allocate a budget one from 60 rands to 200 rand. You'd be amazed what kind of interest and engagement you can create with your consumers. Again, please, Facebook page is a free business page for everybody. The 7th tip is virtual classes. Just for the fun of it, I got bored and I created something called the Virtual Curry Club with my family, because I was thinking, what can we do in lockdown? We'll teach people how to cook a curry on a Sunday every week. And what hit me from that is that this is an opportunity for any business. It's cost us nothing, and you can literally create your Facebook page through your Facebook page or even your Facebook group. You could do virtual classes. So if you are a restaurateur, get your chef to cook from home the classic meals they had on your menu. I think that's a great opportunity. And companies like Airbnb have now just started that called Experiences, where you can follow families in the middle of Africa cooking whatever they're cooking. So again, another opportunity is think about what your product or service is. Is there anything within that could be a virtual thing? Is there anything in that could be still virtual to keep you connected? It could be a yoga class. It could be how to stitch. It could be anything you want it to be. So again, virtual classes, it's free apart from the data. It's absolutely free and easy to do. In our family, my daughter, who's 12 years old, is the camera person. The twins are the cooks with their mum. And it's all done with just using an iPhone. There's no experience needed. And it's amazing what kind of engagement you get. We've got over 1,000 people. So it does work as long as it's relevant. The final one here is what I call content planning. Based on today's uncertainty, create a content plan for the next 12 months. We know we've lost the first 4 to 5 months of where we are. But look at what's in the future, because we don't know when the borders are going to be lifted. We don't know when the barriers are going to be lifted. We don't know when international travelers are going to be landing on our shores again, let alone domestic. Look at the seasonality. You know, winter for everyone has come early, which is the worst season for any tourism, especially in South Africa at this point in time, because it's our winter. Is that most businesses plan for the worst. So again, think about seasonality. Think about public holidays and festive holidays. And through that, create some kind of content calendar. And here's a quick template. If anyone wants it, feel free. But all I've done here is broken down a content calendar in regards to the key seasons for South Africa in particular. I know it's the global broadcast. It's from November to March. Autumn is April. We're in May now. To August is going to be our winter months and springs. And in regards to, I'm keeping track of, keep track of COVID lockdown. Where are we now? When does it open? We don't know. Hopefully in June it starts getting lifted. What's your social media plan? What is the content? What's the theme? Look at seasonality. And then think about events. So if I looked at Franschhoek, for example, they have lots of events planned throughout the whole year, from the summer wines to the District Festival Bastille Day, Uncorked, MCC. There's a lot of these that have just been cancelled or question marks. But again, think about what you can do with regards to your business in your area. Create some kind of content calendar. So that's all of part 1 and part 2. This is my final section. This has been incomplete because me, William, John, and team are still working on it. But here's a thought start. Again, being asked to do this webinar, it got me thinking. I really do love strategy. I really love thinking about new ways out. And one thing that's really, really apparent for all of us, and if I look at my own family, my own inner family and extended family, I don't know any of us who want to travel right now internationally. Even if I could, even if the borders were lifted tomorrow, I do not believe I'd take my family and kids abroad right now. But what I would do is probably get into my car to go to another destination. That I feel safe about in the sense I'm still close to my home. So I've just started this way. It's like, until this feeling comes from, the day we were told we were allowed to leave, I remember walking in my backyard after lockdown, and the one thing that hit me, and I'm sure hit everyone, and we've seen all the photos of people walking, it's the privilege of being able to go outside, the privilege of being able to appreciate the beauty of our landscape, the beauty of our surrounding, and the freedom to explore and discover again. You felt like a child again. I mean, I walk my estate every single morning, every single evening. The day we walked out as a family of 5 with our dogs, it was like we've never done it before. And there's something lacquer about that. It's about what's in your backyard. That, to me, was a destination in itself. It was like going on a mini little holiday walk on a beach. But this was my backyard. So the idea really is that, when I'm talking about step 3, is creating a purpose and inspiration to venture out once more, once lockdowns reduce. Again, the problem is that we don't know there's a clear date for international, let alone domestic travelers. The challenge right now we all have is creating something that is going to help businesses today. Most people are still too scared to travel afar, let alone nationally or internationally. A potential solution we want to get out there is what's in our backyard, what is in our local vicinity. So what we come up with is our approach. So here's a quick thing. It's like a 1-page strat I tend to write, and I look at things in a very pragmatic way. I look at what's the problem and what's the reframe objective. What I mean by that, what's the opportunity that really matters here? And the next thing I look at is what's the barrier and what's the key strategic hurdle that stops you achieving that? And then what is the solution that matters? So if I take the first one, the problem, lockdown restriction, fear of traveling, and contracting COVID-19. So no one really is ready to or wants to travel right now, or let alone be abroad. But if we look at what the opportunities, we will be able to travel again and experience destination both locally and afar. That is going to happen, we just don't know when. The barrier right now for everybody, from what I understand, and for me in particular, is a feeling of safety whilst traveling. Last year, I traveled every single week for the whole year, from Cape Town to Joburg. It wasn't still domestically, but it is. If I had to do that right now, I'll be quite scared. So the solution that matters when we talk about tourism and travel is let's reset travel by rediscovering and exploring and supporting your local. And as you've taken my beans here from earlier, is local is lekker. So discover your local. It's about explore your local. It's also about meet your locals. I think this is one thing that I really do believe will work right now, is that we have one of the most beautiful countries in the world. If we just take South Africa, with borders closed right now, we have enough destinations with different offers, from the big 5 to the beaches, to the mountains, to the wineries, to Cape Town, to everything on our doorsteps. So I can get to my car and get to a beach, and it's a holiday. And it always is a holiday for me and my family. I think we can build a platform that encourages local tourism, that encourages domestic travel from your car from one destination to another. So that's one thing we're working on right now. We don't have it all mapped out, but we're looking at something called Meet Your Local, because local is lekker. So that's me in closing. I think end of the day, we're all in a unique time and place where our world and our plans for the future have been interrupted. And it has been interrupted, not just disrupted, it's been interrupted beyond any conceivable comprehension. And it's all been done by a single invisible virus. But the great thing is that we're all in it together. We all are on this boat, on this ocean, and we're all seeing survival mode very differently. Some are sailing with a bit of difficulties, others are being hit by the biggest storm ever. What we all need to do is look forward and see the path in what we want it to be. And yes, the world will be different, but it's ours for the taking. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you for listening. I hope it gave some insights in regards to what we're doing locally and how we're operating. Thank you.
Well done, Prax. Thank you so much for that. Really cool to see those strategic slides coming alive into something that's a platform that can actually be used by a lot of people in tourism. I think there's a very interesting kind of debate happening right now where people are really kind of waiting for international travel to be the thing that becomes the catalyst to kind of get the whole tourism industry going again. But I think it's very important for us to pay attention to what happens in our backyards first. And that's one of the key messages that we're trying to get people to understand, is that take control of the social media channels that you already have, beef them up, use them better, get people to start hearing your message and your story coming through, whether it's just on Facebook or whether it's Facebook and Instagram or any of the other channels that you're using. And Prax, thank you for laying out simple things like a content plan. Those are things that are very, very important. And I think we sometimes race over those things to get to content that we think sometimes works for us without planning it out properly. So thank you so much for sharing those valuable insights. I think it reminds me of those times that we used to work together on all the SA tourism campaigns,
Yep.
You know, coming together and keeping it simple, which is sometimes the biggest challenge. One thing just before we let you go, Prax, and we invite MQ to join us, there's been so many things that we've seen shifting in terms of business, in terms of expectations. I like what you were saying about the reset opportunity that we have, because there's certain things in travel now we have the opportunity to reinvent and to kind of rejig and make it fit better. There's also in the coming months going to be a very different travel landscape that's available to us to get that work done. You spoke a little bit about the sustainability of those things with the focus on people. Do you want to just wrap that up into a nice little pistachio-sized nut for us as your parting thought?
Look, for me, I think here's a closing thought more than anything, is that we have never been given this opportunity in our life. One, to spend so much time with our family or our loved ones, so much time in your own confine of your own building, to reassess ourselves as humans. And it's quite a deep thing, but the truth is allowing us the opportunity to start with a white blank canvas again. And if I look at travel and tourism, I think we take a lot for granted. I mean, I think our biggest challenge when we hit 1.5 billion people, international travelers last year, is that what was sustainable beyond that? In doing so much traveling, are we doing more harm to our country and our world? So I think for us, I think it's giving us an opportunity to rethink how we do travel and how to make it more sustainable for the future generations. We want to encourage travelers, but I do believe we also got responsibility to the world and each other, that it's done in a responsible way. And again, let's start locally.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Prax. Really appreciate your time and all your hard work that's gone into all those slides. I want to encourage people in the chat and also in the social media pages that follow to reach out to all of our speakers and to ask them all the difficult questions that you may not have the opportunity to ask now. We certainly do make them available to you post the webinar so that you can really kind of see the marrow from the bone, as it were. I see in the bottom of the screen our final speaker is ready to take the stage. MQ and I have worked together on a number of different platforms in agencies that we've worked to build together, and in great big opportunities that South African tourism allowed us to work together. And then since then, also done a few interesting ups and downs with agencies and clients. So I'm very pleased to see your smiling face there, MQ. I'd like to introduce you to one of the kind of like thought leaders in the space of Uncommon Sense. He's going to be talking to us a little bit more about what the airlines and some of the other big challenges that face South Africa as a tourism destination need to kind of grapple with. I want to thank you for joining us, and I know you've been working hard at getting your slides going too. So don't you want to say hi, wave to the people as we get your slides onto the deck? Very eager to hear what you have to say. And again, just thank you for the time that was given to us by Brent and also by PRAKASH as we go into the final stage of the webinar. Thank you. I hear you. Speak up. There you are. Smile and wave.
Hello, everyone. I'm having a little bit of a technical challenge in the sense that I can't hear anything that William is saying, but I can tell from the fact that I'm on screen now that you're expecting to hear from me. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much to both Brent and PRAKASH, who have given us some real good food for thought. And it's really good to see all of you guys online and the conversation that's been happening in the comments. So will you just help me out? Can you hear me? Okay. I can say that PRAKASH can hear me. If I can get one more confirmation, then what I'll do is I will then get on with the presentation. Excellent, excellent. I have prepared a few slides to show you, so let me get those up on screen, and let's get on with some of the thoughts that I've presented, that I've prepared for you. So, thank you so much for joining us. It is an unenviable task today to speak to you about tourism when global travel and tourism has never seen anything like this. From the images that we're seeing all around the world, massive fleets being grounded and being parked in real formations all around the world, one of the things that we can see is that this is a crisis that has got no parallel. We've looked at all of the disturbances that have happened in the past, and the only comparable one that we can find is the 1919 Spanish flu. And that was a pandemic which was happening when air travel hadn't actually come into its own. This was when traveling by boat or by sea was the predominant way of moving people over throughout continents, and also land was a predominant way, being fueled by railways, as it were, to move people around. Since 1950, as Prax had mentioned, up until today, we have not seen something so disturbing to global travel. We saw that there were scary predictions around the fact that almost 30%, or that the travel industry was going to shrink to 30% of what it was expected to be this year. With these trying times, one of the things that I thought that we'd do is that we'd start off on a little sober note and to see how it is that we should position ourselves. What posture should we adopt for these times? I think whenever I'm confronted with this, one of the things that I like to look at is a story that comes out of the Jim Collins book, Good to Great. In it, Jim Collins talks about a conversation that he had with a rear admiral in the United States Army. He was a prisoner of war, and he had been shot down and captured for 7 years in a prisoner of war camp. It was such an interesting thing because the insights about how to survive something that difficult was something that has been useful and has been applied in business ever since that great book has come out. Admiral Jim Stockdale said that one of the things that he found in his captured experience was that the people who were optimists, the people who thought that they'd get out by Christmas, the people who thought that this would be a short time and they just needed to hang in there for a little bit, the optimists were the ones that were least likely to make it out of that prisoner of war camp alive. As he would put it, he said that it was the optimism that would cause those people to die from a broken heart. So one of the things that he shared with Jim was that how we looked at it differently was that he looked at it in a paradoxical blend. he said that it was important to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. And there are plenty of those to go around. Many of those, the fact that there is no income. Many of those, the fact that some payments have not stood still. Many of those, the phone calls from financial institutions requiring a repayment of loans. There are plenty of those brutal facts for us to confront right now. But on the other side, he said that you should never lose faith that you will prevail in the end. And what that does is that it provides us with the posture that I think is the relevant posture for the times. While we hope that the recovery will be swift, that it will be fast, and that the declines and the recessions won't be deep, it's important for us to confront the brutal facts of our reality as we see them and not as we hope for them to be. At the same time, we need to make sure that we never lose faith in the fact that we will win in the end. So with that posture in mind, I think that the situation is so deep, so disruptive, so different, so without precedent and parallel, that it is appropriate for us to look at a disturbance that may be bigger and deeper than we all hope to see and that we're prepared for. But the good news is that no matter how deep it may be, it won't be deeper than things that we have experienced as people before. And as a consequence of that, we have the tools, we have the know-how, we have the ability to make it out the other side. And so one of the things that I'd like us to think about is, regardless of how long this takes and how deep it becomes, what are the best things that we can do in order to improve our chances? So one of the things that's clear about something like this that doesn't have a precedent, that doesn't have parallels, that's something that isn't unlike something we've seen before, at least insofar as the global tourism industry, the way that we know it, is concerned, one of the things is it will rely on two parts of our knowledge. The parts that we've always known, that we've been good at, the stuff that we do really well and that had us in the tourism business before the pandemic broke out. And then we're going to have to do a number of things, a number of unknown things. And the unknowns are going to take two parts. The first part of the unknown is the fact that we're going to have to do things on a short-term basis, on a survival basis, that we have never done before, never thought that we would do, and therefore have no skills in. The second part of the unknown is the fact that as tourism recovers, when demand comes back, when we're back to doing substantially the things that we like to do and need to do, and all of the core tourism business that we've always been engaged in, when that returns and we've dropped the survival work that we've been doing, tourism will have changed in some way. And the people that will come to visit us will have a different set of expectations, a different set of concerns, and they'll be looking for differences in how they consume the product that we have. So I'd like us to take a look at it. Following on from this, one of the things that we see is that many of the businesses, as they are configured today, are very, very good at certain things. They have an overdeveloped muscle, in a sense, a muscle that is developed in game drives or food or tourism attractions, or a something that has made that business remarkable. However, in continuing with the theme that we have to use both what is known and unknown, the other less developed muscles are going to have to come into play. And the reason for that is that some of the predictions around when demand may return to 2019 levels are as long as 2 to even 3 years. And therefore, what we do in the intervening period is really, really important. Even when lockdowns ease and people are allowed to fly, one of the things that you'll find is that there are going to be a number of people who may actually lack the means, even though they may have the desire. There are many financial impacts, not just in the tourism and travel industry, but across the economy broadly, that might mean that even though people would like to come and visit, they may not be able to for some time. Also, as businesses conserve cash, one of the things that we're seeing is that business travel might take a long time to recover still. And businesses seem to be the biggest embracers of video conferencing technology and the alternatives that are emerging for these times. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to be in a survival mode, which will get us to the revival. And when the revival has taken place, the rebound simply needs to be better. The economics of that means that we need to recover from all the things that we've lost now from the COVID-19 pandemic. We're also going to need to live well during the phase of the recovery. And also, given the interconnected nature of travel and tourism, one of the things that we're going to need to do is we're going to have to try and survive and then thrive and then have an abundance in such a way that we can save for any global shock that might happen in the future. So there is a definite progression about how it is that we start off at a low base and that we can ramp up our success to make sure that we are in a better position should another shock like this take place. But what's clear for us is that there are definite advantages that South Africa has that South Africa would benefit from when we come out and that demand has not, when demand returns. So if I look at just a number of things, if I was looking at the number of traits that a post-COVID-19 destination would have in its favor, the fact that South Africa has been little affected, the fact that our instance of COVID-19 has not been as wide and as broad, would definitely be a point in our favor when people are considering which destinations they would like to visit. In all, South Africa as a destination is under-visited. We have a huge country with a multiplicity of attractions. Just our most famous attractions are the size of other whole countries. I'm sure that everyone knows that the Kruger National Park is the size of Israel. And so one of the things that you find is that we are not in danger of the trend of overpopulation that we're seeing in some of the major centers of Europe and elsewhere. The other thing is that we really have a high value product. By virtue of the fact that we have a favorable exchange rate and the fact that our cost of living is comparatively lower, what you can buy in South Africa on holiday is real value compared to where people normally live and conduct their economic lives. We're also a place that offers wide open spaces. I think this will become important after a period of confinement. I do feel that people are going to be looking for places where they can, stretch out and see the vastness and the expanse of the tourism product. South Africa also is blessed with a very high repeater profile. This is very unique, particularly amongst long-haul destinations where most people just want to visit once. One of the things that we find is that in the recent past, there have been many years where 50% of international travelers have been a repeater to the South African destination, which means that the chances are very good that the people that have visited us before want to visit us again. And then while we're still underperforming our tourism potential, we are on the right track. We do see that when you look at WATIC reports, when you look at Oxford economics, it's a constant refrain that South Africa could benefit so much more from tourism than it's currently being, given its product, its infrastructure, its ability to deliver on the tourism promise to millions of people around the world. That being the case, the ambitious targets that the government has set means that we'd still be underperforming our potential. And there are a few places, very few things in this economy where we are so clearly underperforming and have the opportunity to do more when demand returns. There are, of course, some things that are on the negative side of the equation. The fact that we are far from key source markets is a constant consideration. The fact that our COVID-19 relief has been weak as a South African economy. The fact that we will need to stimulate demand. In other words, that the marketing effort that we'd all need to do needs to be stepped up, because this is going to be what will get people traveling, and also get people traveling over the concerns that they have and get them traveling to South Africa. Domestic tourism also is not a traditional strength. While there are some people who used to travel internationally who may not be able to, one of the things that we need to get right during this time is the ability to attract and to be able to deliver a product that South African travelers want to visit and also can afford to do so. Then the fact that some of the tourism trade is locked into tourism is both, I suppose, based on your perspective, a blessing and something of a challenge. Due to fixed infrastructure, if you think of, say, for example, a convention center, a hotel, a guest house, a B&B, all of those are very difficult to shed quickly and to move on to something else. I don't, hopefully, because of the long-term prospects, I hope nobody would do that, and I don't think that we should do that, given the certainty of the fact that demand will come back in tourism. But it's one of the things that means that you are hindered in what you can do with some of the fixed infrastructure that you have. And then finally, our enabling environment, the investment in some of the roads, the infrastructure, the municipalities, for other places of interest continues to be low, and it continues to be slow. So we do have a whole range of things that could go in our favor, and some things that could, that present some challenges. But in the short term, one of the things that I thought that we would do in the survival mentality, in this, how it is that we're going to get from here to this much more promising future, is the fact that I thought we should just shorten our timeframes. It was an important thing because when you don't know what you do, when you are grappling in the unknown, trying to figure out the ultimate answer, the end goal, is a very difficult thing indeed. And sometimes it can lead us to use a whole range of energies that might not be productive. So one of the things that I think is very useful in that is to look at what I call micropurpose. What are the things that you can do right now that seem to have an effect that moves you in a direction, that moves you forward towards service, towards an income, towards anything that you might do now which might aid your survival. I'm a big fan of looking for green shoots in your environment. And the reason why I'm a fan of looking for green shoots is that when there's a green shoot in your environment, what you'll find is that that particular potential success point, that particular place comes out of your environment, tends to be native to your environment, and as a consequence of that, what you'll find is that it will be suited for where you are. For example, Prakash just showed us what has been happening in Franschhoek. But Franschhoek being a village and having the heritage that it does, the resource that it has, the people that it has, one of the things is there are going to be very different responses for very different areas and very different settings, more rural than Franschhoek and more urban, for example, than others. So if we can take a look at what are the green shoots that we're seeing, what are the things that I could do to be of value, what are the things that people are commenting on, and to try and scale those things, I think that that's a better way of attacking the short term instead of trying to connect your very particular skills to, maybe becoming a coder or trying to do a morning game drive when you run, a 5-star boutique hotel, on a city hill, for example. So those are the things that I thought we should look at first. I think the second thing is that we need to reestablish contact with previous travelers. As I had mentioned earlier, our repeater rate is so high that at times half the people who are visiting South Africa are visiting a second time. And this is from international air markets. I know the frequency for surrounding countries is much higher than that. It can get to almost 10 times a year. But in terms of international air markets, what you'll find is that at any point, almost half the people who are in South Africa have visited before. So picking up a conversation with the people that you still have contact with, be it via social media, Facebook, a TripAdvisor review, a Google review, your Expedia hotels.com reviews, whichever platform you've got to speak to people who have visited us before, that is likely to have an impact in terms of encouraging those people to return. It's going to be much easier to get those people to consider coming back to South Africa than people are going to be doing it for the first time. Now, no matter what we're doing, whether we're trying to do something new for survival, or whether we're trying to get to speak to people who have visited us before as the low-hanging fruit to get them back, one of the things that we need to do is we need to establish trust. And by showing ourselves trustworthy is something that is going to be a key driver going forward. Even if people know you and like your product, there are going to be a number of concerns and assurances that they're going to need in order to be able to enjoy the experience that you're offering. Then finally, the one thing that I think we should do is that we should use social media first and foremost as a listening tool, to listen to what these new concerns are, what the traveler trends are, what the needs are, what the wants are, what the desires are, and also a communication method. But if we miss the ability to listen first, it will detract from our ability to communicate effectively later. So from these kind of 4 points, one of the things that I thought we should do is that even as we aim for a domestic tourism recovery, one of the things that we can do for domestic tourism is that we're going to need to try and get to know these travelers. There are many parts of our tourism trade that have relied only on international travelers and have built really good, successful businesses over time. And this is going to be the first time that it's now being focused on our domestic travelers. That being the case, we're going to need a lens. We're going to need to get to know them somehow. We're going to find out what it is that they're looking for. And in this consideration, I think that the best way to do that is to listen in on domestic traveler conversations. So whenever there are hashtags about travel on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, whenever there are groups that are discussing these matters, just to be in the conversation and to read up as much about it and to see the trends which matter to your business, that matter to your product. This is the opportunity that I think is going to be the first step towards taking aim at this domestic tourism opportunity that traditionally some of the businesses in the trade have not been focused at. Whether you've been focused there or not, there will always be a change in how people want to consume travel. And even if your business is 90% domestic tourism, what domestic travelers are looking for today may have significantly shifted from what they were looking for in January. And so the encouragement around social media and using it as a listening platform remains. I thought that it was actually worth digging a little deeper into how it is that we're going to establish trust. I think that the trust that people used to have has been eroded for a number of reasons. Some due to actions that have been happening in the tourism industry, and others have got nothing to do with that. For example, the ability to respond to a pandemic is something that people are now thinking about that has nothing to do with the fact that you chose to go into the tourism business. However, the ability to respond is something that is a point in our favor. In the first instance, you'll find that trust is made up of 3 components. The first one being ability, the second one being benevolence, and the third one being integrity. Let's pause a little just on each to illustrate the point. Ability is something that's very, very specific. And while lots of people are trustworthy, you'll find that that trust is localized. Most people will trust their nannies with their children, but they would not trust them with their car engine, for example, or their taxes, or wouldn't trust them to do something very far out of their stated ability. So when you are a provider of an attraction, you provide zip lines, you provide sunset cruises, or another fantastic tourism offering, one of the things that you would need to highlight in that context is your ability to respond to an outbreak, or to at least prevent an outbreak, or to prevent some contagion between the people that you are serving. While you may have established yourself as the best zipliner in the business, the best paraglide person, or the best person to go hiking with, it is worthwhile making sure that your specific ability in addressing the key concerns of your potential travelers is something that you consider communicating. So the second thing is that it is highly, highly, highly important to show that you care for your potential travelers, and you're not doing it just as a cheap business gimmick. There's something about the fact that when businesses demonstrate genuine care, that it comes across that people are more apt to trust you. I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said that to ease one's heartache is to forget one's own. And if we can genuinely get into that mindset, one of the things that we find is that when we're looking out for somebody else in our environment, what happens is that that care comes across, and it's a key building block of trust. So even with the people that you work with, the people who interact with customers, the people on your front line, the ones that are genuinely interested in the welfare of people are the ones that I would suggest that A, are part of your communication, and B, are the people that are speaking to customers. And then lastly, the integrity piece is a huge part, is a huge part of global travel considerations at the moment. It's a really big deal. There are concerns around the environment, there are concerns around being green, there are concerns around local communities being left out of the tourism bonanza that we've seen when tourism has been growing almost unabated for the last 50 years. So integrity is really just going, these are the values that I have, and I act in accordance with those values. And those value-based decisions are really deep in tourism at the moment, and they are set to continue getting deeper. So alongside your values, I would encourage you to look at them, and also to be clear about the fact that you're going to act in accordance with them, that you can start communicating them, because the environment does matter. The economic inequality in the world does matter. Responsible sourcing is a huge point of consideration for travelers. And these and other considerations like these are the things that I think we should be looking at in tourism, and making sure that we have this building of trust as an underlying theme to the communication that we will do going forward. In the longer term, one of the things that I want to do is that, due to the absolute certainty of the fact that travel demand will return, and that it will be one of the largest industries in the world again, given that we're not sure of the intervening period, one of the things that we need to do is that in looking at a rebounded tourism industry, we need to look very carefully at what the crisis was at the time. What were the things that people were grappling with in the industry, which COVID is now likely to accelerate? So that when we come back to it, we don't come back expecting 2019, but we come back to it with a 2021, 2022, and future proof outlook. So the first one of those things is, and I'll spend some time on this, is to consider the eudaimonic purpose of the tourism offering. We'll spend some time on that to determine the changes that need to be made for this appropriate time. I think is a very, very important thing. We also need to develop a story that we can tell to people in line with the change in purpose that we are perceiving. And then also, we're going to, because this is going to live mainly for the businesses on this webinar on social media, how we're going to package this little story to be bite-sized and to be really short and snappy, so that we can make sure that all these considerations can find the people for whom they're intended. So let's talk a little about eudaimonia. One of the things that we do in our business, the OMG is founded on the idea that people are overly fixated on tangible things. And there are a whole range of intangible drivers that drive business. The reasons why people think the way they do, act the way they do, buy what they buy, choose what they choose, happens mainly because of the intangibles. You know, these are psychological and emotional and rational drivers, as opposed to things that we can touch and hold. As a result of this, we spend most of our work looking at what are the intangible frames, what are the tools, what are the methodologies that we can use in order to make sure that we can help businesses grow. So one of the things that we see is that if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the things that we find is that most businesses have made their money at the bottom of the pyramid. The businesses that provide food, water, warmth, shelter, mining, lumber, all of those businesses, those are businesses that are the big businesses that we see today. However, this is also where businesses have gotten in trouble with things like the environment, with a lot of the ecological decimation, and the really nasty parts of capitalism that we've seen. And one of the things that I think we should consider is that I've been reading a lot of literature around how it is that people are starting to do a lot more with a lot less. So it's taking hold the idea that having fewer possessions, that using less of the environment, that being less labor intensive with those things is the way of the economic future. So if you look at this, one of the businesses to consider, let's say Facebook, is a truly large business now that in essence has very little in terms of resources or physical resources. And what it's attempting to do is it's not trying to find a market for food and water and warmth and shelter. What it's trying to do is it's trying to do things like solving the problem that humans have for connection, for solving loneliness, for solving shared events, for example, by being able to go onto a Facebook Live platform and enjoy things together. So one of the things that we're starting to find is that there are businesses that are elevating what it is that they are starting to do away from the physicality of things towards a far higher purpose, which is leading towards fulfillment. One of the things that we know for sure is that a cell phone isn't a guarantee of connection. So while the businesses that make cell phones are very resource intensive because they have all sorts of minerals in the device, what Facebook is trying to do is try to leverage it in order to make sure that people can now benefit from connection. So this idea is the idea, and it's an idea that Aristotle actually spoke about. He spoke about the fact that our engagement in our work life should be driven by two separate things. One of those he called was techne. And techne is where we get the word technical in English. And this type of skill is a skill that we have in terms of all of our day-to-day business. So in tourism, highly skilled, lots of techne on the webinar at the moment. And one of the things that we find with that is that this is where we're most comfortable. This is what people can audit. We have beds, we have breakfast, we have, we serve eggs, we do a number of things that, are tangible, are holdable, accountable. On the other side, one of the things that you find is that this idea of Sophia. And Sophia is, is the root word that you find in the word philosophy. It's a wisdom of sorts. It's a higher order comfort, fulfillment, as it were. When we speak about customer satisfaction, it's that thing beyond the physical that gives us satisfaction that is being referred to. Now, I thought this was a useful lens because we have quite a number of lenses that we apply, but I thought that for a business like tourism, a very useful lens, for the simple reason that it is, due to its size, a highly commoditized industry, and an industry that continues to become more and more commoditized, where everyone continues to have great accommodation, wonderful food, local cuisine. Everyone's got beautiful rivers and oceans and, a whole range of things that are all really attractive to a potential traveler. One of the things that we now need to look at is how can we move away from the fact that we have these physical things, and how can we move to getting more towards the satisfaction that people want? So more substance, even over and above the form of the tangible things that we use in our businesses. So to give you an example of this and to kind of illustrate the point, somebody who uses this type of thinking is a man by the name of Alain de Botton. He is a philosopher who runs a school of life, and he had a very interesting call with a guy by the name of Brian Chesky, who, as you know, runs Airbnb. And I thought that it was useful to bring this conversation which is happening across the economy, into the tourism sector, and then we'll land it into the social media landscape soon thereafter.
All right, so it sounds like we've got a sound issue there. What I think we'll do is we'll make sure that these clips are available for everyone to have a look at again afterwards. We'll post them on the Facebook page. Sorry, MQ, I'm not sure why that didn't play with audio. We could see the face and the lips moving, but I was struggling to keep up with that. So I think let's repost that later. I think we can continue. Of course, I'm not sure whether MQ can actually hear me or not. All right, so I think let's try and send a carrier pigeon or some other kind of communication to MQ to let him know we need to move on. So let's move on. I'm going to try sign language. Let's see if that works. MQ, that means you. Please continue as we fix the technical problems later. Sorry, I hope that wasn't too distracting for everyone else.
So my apologies for that. It appears that the sound is not coming through of the segment. So perhaps I could chat you through what it is that I was trying to convey through the video. One of the things that took place was that Brian Chesky was having a number of thoughts around what it is that he wanted Airbnb to be in a time frame of the next maybe 5 to 10 years. And one of the things that he found was that Airbnb wasn't necessarily just a trading of rooms. What he wanted it to be was that he wanted to deliver happy travel. And happy travel is very different to trading accommodation. And one of the things that he found was that when he had asked people and when he had strapped some little, a number of cameras around people to see what it was they're getting out of their journeys, one of the things that he found was that people were not necessarily getting the higher order things that they were hoping for from their trips. For example, couples were hoping to go away and to, reignite the spark, or people were happy to spend family time together, or, see the world in a new and interesting way, or get a new perspective on things. When you looked at all of those types of higher order travel needs, one of the things that he found was that travel was delivering incredibly well on things like accommodation, on things like food, on things like transfers. It was a seamless experience. But one of the things that they were starting to see is that when couples went away to reignite the spark, chances were that it wasn't going to take place. Now, whether or not, if the problems don't originate from a lack of travel, will travel solve a couple of problems is a different matter. But one of the things that you find is that the reason why people were taking trips to spend time as a family and to bond, and then find themselves, for example, at a museum, not speaking to each other, but all, exploring different rooms of the place. All of these types of higher ordered needs were not being met very well via travel. One of the things then that Brian sought out to do was he wanted to figure out what are the things that he could change. How could he build on top of this platform, which is Airbnb, in order to make sure that they were better, that there were better enablements for meeting of this higher order travel demand. And I thought this was really important because over and above the values that we were speaking about the fact that people want to know that they're being large in the environment, that they're benefiting local communities, and that the places they're staying are green and are committed to green energy and those types of things. I think what people are starting to look for and why people may actually travel again is really tied up in this idea of real value and real satisfaction. So one of the things, for example, is how is it that you might enable, over and above your physical amenities, the thing that people are really after. So this has been a real question that is at the beginning of exploration in tourism, but it's one of the real important things, because one of the things that is necessary is that people are going to continue to look for value. And if couples, in fact, could, go to a destination and also benefit from, the wisdom or the storytelling or the traditions of a different culture with regards to their communication and how they approach their marriage, for example, this might be an add-on which people might be able to prioritize over just leisure. Now, we've got to do something here which is much better than something like the very bad movie Couples Retreat or something like that. But there should be a myriad of ways in which family time could be encouraged, for example, when people are in destination, and not necessarily making sure that they are A, safe, B, fed, and C, apart, which might continue to be a driver once demand comes back. But you'll find that the value will start to move to things which start to deliver those higher order values. And so one of the things that I thought would be useful to think about is what are the higher order things that people have been starting to get out of your tourism experience? And they don't have to be deep and meaningful. Delight is something that people will pay a lot of money for. Just some levity, some joy, some entertainment, a different point of view. So by no means must this be a serious thing. But what it is that it needs to be understood. And if you can deliver that reliably and credibly, and then you can communicate that, you'll find that the people who are looking for that are going to start to factor those things far more into their decision making than just what your room looks like versus your rate versus how far you are from the airport, or all of the other tangible considerations that used to dominate travel before. And so this would be typically a eudaimonic way of starting to look at travel. How can we lift it away from the things that we can touch and feel, not that we're dispensing with them, but understanding that if you look at our destination versus Thailand versus Mexico versus Cancun versus New York versus a whole range of places around the world, many of those destinations also have the same thing. So if we can start to add as our differentiator the things in terms of satisfaction that we can more credibly lend to the tourism experience, we will be starting to be at an advantage where I think we are at the beginning of where travel is going to go, rather than the fact that this is where travel, like it has been, focused on the tangibles in the main, is going to stay. So I thought that was a very useful way of thinking about it. And also I thought it was good to have a conversation in the context of what Airbnb is thinking about, because one of the things is they have now started to make a number of movements in that direction. For example, Airbnb has started launching 1,000 experiences, I think the product is called. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to move towards building on its base of accommodation and trying to give people more and more of the higher order ones that they have. I think from those experiences, they're going to learn a bunch of stuff. They're going to review it and then try and refine it and keep trying to scale the successes and make sure that they dampen some of the failures that come out of it. But this is an attempt of one of the large travel players to go, there's a deep satisfaction that travel offers. And Prakash showed a scrapbook that came from his travels when he was a lot younger. Clearly, a lot less gray hair. So something that was really, really important to him, something that he continues to cherish and something that he wants his children to experience. That higher order feeling, whatever it was, inspired him to take a sabbatical from being a high-flying executive in the ad world in London and to travel around the world and to cherish those memories forever. If we can start to understand what those feelings are and communicate those and infuse that into our tourism offering and into our story, and to do so credibly in the way that we've spoken about, I think that this is the differentiator that will cause people who are on the edge, who are hesitating, who have concerns, to go, that concern that higher order need that that person is offering is worth me taking a chance, even in spite of the concerns that I have, and expedite the timeline for the return of global tourism. So because this is being discovered in social media, one of the things that I thought that we would do is that I would perhaps share with you a final thought. And this thought perhaps is the best thought this is the best thought that I have about substance over form. There are many people who are incredible at helping with social media to make sure that graphics are designed, videos work, that there aren't technical challenges like I've experienced now with my video. And there are a lot of those services, and they abound. But crucially, what to say on social media is a difficult thing. And which is why I thought that we should always start off by listening so that we can understand it before we get to this stage of actually figuring out what it is that we want to say. So the best thought that I have for this comes from a storyteller who used to work in the movie business. He used to write trailers for Hollywood blockbusters and then develop the scripts as well. And one of the things that he has learned throughout his career is to summarize a movie in just one line. And happily for him, he found that it's far more profitable to help businesses to do the same. And so he's no longer helping movies make money, but he's helping businesses make money by clarifying what it is that they say, what their message is. And he's now the CEO of a company called Brent. He's a guy by the name of Donald Miller, and he has a book out calling How to Build a Story Brand, which I would highly recommend if you'd like to understand more of how to develop these concepts. One of the things that he suggests is that one of the things that is really helpful is to develop a one-liner for your business. Thinking through all of the things that we've now spoken about, what the mnemonic purpose is, how to build trust, what are the key considerations therein, to be able to summarize this in social media character form. So he suggests 3 things to do here. One is to identify your customer's problem. So one of the things in the Don Miller approach, he doesn't encourage you to introduce yourself and go, hi, I'm so-and-so from this wonderful guest house, and it's in a wonderful place, and describe yourself in wonderful details. He starts off by going, this is the problem. So how that might be in the tourism industry might be, most couples never reignite the spark they wish to reignite when they go on a trip. So it goes straight into a problem, and what it does is that it actually allows you to be very clear about the people that you're targeting and for whom your product and your service is for. So open with the problem, because in a storytelling approach, those are the things which hook people into a story. The second thing is, he says, you should explain your plan to them. Okay, so what are the things that you do? What's your product? What's your service? That makes sure that you can help people with the problem that you've just highlighted. The third part of it is describe a successful ending to their story. And this is the resolution that we're speaking about. So because I don't have any better ideas at the moment, one of the things that I thought that we would look at is how to develop a one-liner for our tourism businesses. And quite simply, that would be to identify the problem. So we have a problem. When couples travel, they fail to reignite the spark they hope to. We have a whole range of great communicators, or all of the people at our resort are couples that are great at communicating, so that you can see great communication in action to give you the spark that you need to communicate better with your spouse, or something like that. A summary that goes, here's the problem, here's our plan to help you solve it, and here's the happy resolution for you. So one of the things that Don Miller does is that his business helps people do this for a living. So his one-liner is, most businesses struggle to talk about what they offer. We have a process that helps clarify their message so that their companies start growing again. So immediately what you can see is, here's the problem, here's the plan that has to solve them, and the outcome, of course, that the companies start growing again. One of the things that I think we have time for, in order to do the difficult but absolutely profitable work, is to think carefully about the things that we want to build trust in, listen to what people want via social media, to understand what the purpose is that we can credibly offer, and to put that into a one-liner that we can credibly use in social media. Because once you have a one-liner, it fits neatly into Twitter, into Facebook, into Instagram. And when you say it over and over and over again, the fact that it is framed in who it's meant for, you'll find that it will be better at attracting the people who are looking for what you have to offer. And that is the key to having a successful social media presence. Over the form which we've spoken about, the substance of it being, it's targeted, it's relevant, it's short, it's a plan for you, and you have a happy outcome, I think is what is going to help us differentiate ourselves amongst the millions and millions of tourism products out there. And that when travel demand returns, that it will return to us first, it will return to us in greater numbers, it will return to us in greater detail, and that we can continue to grow our destination. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And I'm hoping that I will be able to hear William at this time so that I can take some questions. If that's not the case, what I'd like to do then is just maybe use the comment section and do it that way.
Cool. MQ, thanks so much. I think the one-liner is an absolutely critical thing for us as a tourism industry to look at. And I think the sooner we can try and put that narrative together that makes sense, not only local tourists, but also those people that are going to be coming back, flooding back to South Africa. I think the information in your presentation was really insightful in terms of repeated business, et cetera. So I'm really excited to hear how we are going to, as a community of travel professionals and tourism providers, start to work together and bringing that campaign, bringing that one-liner, and getting that storytelling to happen more kind of spontaneously. But with a plan, obviously there's going to be a lot of momentum we can build together to do that. So what I'd like to do now is, I think with the time available to us, we're going to wrap up. We're going to take this conversation into the Facebook page. There's an opportunity for us there to engage beyond the actual webinar itself, and very excited to see how that conversation is going to continue to unfold. So thank you so much to all of our speakers today, to Brent, to Prakash, and to MQ. Please do follow the social media hashtag and keep up to date with all of the changes and the updates that we're making. We're planning to do a special edition coming up next week on the 1st of June. And we look forward to sharing more and more information with you as we continue going forward. So thank you for your time, everybody. Have an awesome week.
Can I listen to your feed?
Okay. While you were typing, we could hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
So.
Not a great platform. This. It's not a great platform at all. It's difficult to share.
It's just.
Yeah.
And
I love what you have to say, but it's a really nonsensical platform. This.
And also.
Like now, because we can see William and you can see a small block of you know, like when you show a presentation. So basically now William replaced your presentation and your block was left at the bottom. So while you type, we can hear you when you're going, you know. So.
Shame that, but I'm so distracted now because I have no feedback
Where's your
whatsoever.
phone?
Here it is.
Why did you put it down?
Well,
I thought you were watching from there.
no, but then.
Yeah, you guys can come out now. I thought you were watching from your phone. Tell your sister she can come out.
Oh.